Hey, BC here for BC Nephro. Today I'm going to talk about contrast nephropathy. Now, there has been a shift in the thinking about contrast nephropathy, that the true incidence is not as high as was once thought, and that it's safer to give contrast at lower levels of kidney function than previously thought. So it's been observed for a long time, and we all know that a certain number of patients get acute kidney injury after receiving contrast. And but the thinking is that many of these patients are sick. They have other things going on, maybe other nephrotoxic medications in the hospital, and they would have gotten acute kidney injury anyway. So it's not really the contrast that caused it. It's the the contrast was an innocent kind of coincidental bystander. So in order to sort this out, they've changed the descriptions to contrast associated acute kidney injury, which means that the acute kidney injury happened after the contrast, and contrast induced acute kidney injury, which means the acute kidney injury happened because of the contrast. Now, sometimes it's difficult to know for sure, but there's some studies that have tried to have a control group and try to estimate this. So what they found out is that contrast-associated acute kidney injury happens with chronic kidney disease being the main risk factor, but the contrast-induced acute kidney injury doesn't really happen unless the GFR is less than 30. So the GFR cutoff in a lot of protocols in hospitals to give intravenous contrast has been shifted down to 30. Now there's a couple things about this and another approach, the way I like to think about this. The first thing, and these approaches are mentioned in the guidelines if you really look at them. The first approach is this, that there shouldn't really be, everything in medicine should be a risk-benefit analysis. There shouldn't really be one that is safe or not safe. So even if the GFR is less than 30 for chronic kidney disease, and there is a risk of contrast-induced nephropathy, that doesn't mean you can't give contrast. You need to weigh the risk, and it does the benefit of the test, the necessity of the test, outweigh that risk. And then you give prophylaxis with IV fluids. Likewise, just because the GFR is greater than 30 or whatever cutoff you have, doesn't mean you should do something with impunity. If you should consider that even if there is the test really necessary, what's the benefit of the test? And even if there is maybe very low risk or just a theoretical risk, if there's not really much benefit to the contrast, then maybe you shouldn't do it anyway. The one thing that I'd like to add is my preference, my suggestion is to have an additional cutoff range between a GFR of 30 and 45. So they in between 30 and 45, most hospitals, radiology departments would consider it safe to give contrast. Now, the problem I have with that is based on those protocols, I don't see that there is a mechanism to ensure that this GFR between 30 and 45 is not acute kidney injury. If you're working on a single GFR and don't know the baseline, it could be acute kidney injury. And it's probably not a good idea to give contrast to someone with acute kidney injury. Now, there's no studies about this, but it's generally thought to be not a good idea in general. Again, unless it was very critical to take that risk. So what I think is in between a GFR of 30 and 45, there should be a pause. And in that pause, there should be some due diligence to try to confirm that this is not acute. And that needs a baseline creatinine. And if you don't have a baseline creatinine, you have to work under the assumption that this could be acute kidney injury. And if it could be acute kidney injury, that may shift your risk-benefit analysis of doing the test. If the benefit of the test still is there, then do it. If the benefit of the test doesn't outweigh that possible risk that is acute kidney injury, then maybe try to think about doing something else. Now, if a GFR is above 45, the chance that there's acute kidney injury going on is less because the kidney function is higher. And even if there is acute kidney injury, the chance it would presumably be less severe than if the GFR was between 30 and 45. So that's an additional consideration. Really think twice when the GFR is less than 45 about giving contrast. And if you have any comments, let me know what you think about this. Put in the comments below. Email me at brian@bcnephro.com. Have a link to an article at bcnephro.com, all in the description below. Have a good one. Till next time.